Slider Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. So glad you're here. The president is going to speak coming up at noon Eastern. I will be hosting, anchoring that speech. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. I hope we do a little football spiking. We got a ton to do today. First, we'll start with the impeachment. Breaking news, the vote ended up exactly how everyone knew it would end up. I'll make the analogy again for the millionth time. If the Kansas City Chiefs were playing in the Super Bowl against a peewee team of 8-year-olds, it would be one thing if all the commentators said, geez, the Chiefs are going to destroy the 8-year-olds. It won't even be close. And so people could actually really get hurt out there. And it would be fine even if we knew that and we went through the motions and we played out the game and the Chiefs won 500-0. And then in the postgame, everyone said, well, we knew that would happen, but there you go, congratulations. Like that would be a weird scenario, but at least it'd be fine, it'd be understandable. The surreal part was the months and months and months of people saying, I don't know, I think the Pee Wee team has a chance. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Guys, there's no chance. And to bring it to impeachment, the Democrats needed 19 Republican senators to vote to remove the president from office. They needed 19. They barely got Mitt Romney. There was no chance this was going to end in any outcome other than 53-47. And again, the surreal part, everyone knew it. Everyone knew it's 53-47. It was going to be 53-47. Months ago, everyone knew it was going to be 53-47, and it ended up being 53-47. I watched some commentator afterwards say, well, you know, there was a lot of speculation throughout this process as to what would happen. No! Maybe there was speculation, but there shouldn't have been any speculation. It was so obvious. This could not have been a bigger absolute waste of time. Absolute waste of time. It was the last hand of the night. The Dems were running out of time. Everyone had to go home. For the poker game, they all went all in. The Democrats did. They were dealt a pair of threes. It's something, but I guess unlike a real poker game, we all knew that it was a completely stacked deck. And we knew that the other player had a pocket aces, right? And you still go all in with your threes, and they have aces. You know you're going to lose, but everyone's like, well, I don't know. Maybe something could happen here at the last minute. Like, no, I guarantee you the Democrats will lose this. I guarantee it. But they went all in anyway, and it backfired massively, and that's what the speech is going to be coming up at noon. I'm so glad this is all over. Thank goodness. All right, so that's impeachment. Could we be done with impeachment forever now? Oh, Rudy had a funny tweet. Nancy keeps saying the forever impeached president, the forever impeached president. Rudy Giuliani said something like the forever acquitted president. So we're done. Done. No more impeachment forever. State of the Union. Got a couple things we still got to chat about here. First, let's address this handshake real quick. Can we play it here? I don't think he saw Nancy Pelosi's hand extended. I don't think he saw it. Look, he hands her the thing, and then he turns around. I don't think he saw it, genuinely. Right, because he handed it to her right hand, right, so her hand's occupied, and then I don't think he saw it. He didn't shake Mike Pence's hand. So I don't think he saw it. But here's the deal. Why would he shake her hand? All right, what's the number one thing that people like about our president? Truly, like at least the supporters of President Trump, what's the number one thing they like about him? He's not a phony. Like people say he's not a politician, but what they really mean is he's not a phony. And what could be more phony than going to the person who hates you, who literally is trying to remove you from your job, and saying, oh, hey, great to see you, Nancy. Oh, how are you today? You having a good day? Oh, it's great to see you. No, not great to see you. That would be so off-brand for Trump. It would be so phony, so inauthentic. And people are sick of politicians being a bunch of phonies. And he wasn't going to have any of it. Why would he reach out his hand? They hate each other. On Nancy ripping the papers. Speaking of phony, check out this picture. And there's video of this too happening. but she pre-ripped the papers in the middle of the speech. There's a video of her right before Trump talked about Rush Limbaugh. She picks the papers up, kind of puts them below the table there, and pre-rips them a little bit. And there you can see the pre-rip. Right? So listen, I don't really care that she did it. I'm not going to be outraged by it. It's just a sign of how much Trump lives in her head rent-free. And it's a sign of her losing control of herself and of her party. As Trump said about Whoopi Goldberg, she's in total free fall. And that's fine by me. It's interesting, just from a sociological perspective. It's interesting to watch Trump haters because it's interesting to watch them become the worst of the person they hate, right? So they say Trump's below the decency of the office and this blah, 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 all this other stuff, right? And then the speaker goes out and pulls a stunt like that, which by every objective standard is also below the decency of the office. And then Trump always comes out ahead because in moments like this, he always rises above the office. And it comes off, well, not comes off. People who hate Trump, they act the very way they say they hate, right? Like imagine if Trump ripped up like the impeachment papers or something. Everyone would be outraged by that. People would say, oh, that's below the decency. Well, Nancy just did that. She did the equivalent of that. So just a life lesson in general, don't let hate consume you because then it becomes you and you become it. And Nancy showed that perfectly yesterday. Okay, final thoughts on the State of the Union, and then I want to get to the state of the Democratic Party. Let's play this video here. The president put out this video. These are the guests of his from yesterday.
America is the greatest country in the world.
I'm very honored and blessed to be here.
It was an honor.
It is an honor to be a guest of the President and the First Lady.
Deeply honored to be here. This is for our daughter, Kayla.
I'm honored and privileged to represent the 22,000 men and women of the United States Border Patrol.
For my family and I, we would like to thank President Donald Trump for inviting us here.
The flag means everything to us. It's what my husband and Gage's dad fought for.
When I see the American flag, it means opportunity.
Pursuit of happiness.
Freedom of speech and everyone coming together.
It means security.
We're the land of the free.
Perseverance, justice.
Together we are one people, one nation, one family, united by one great American flag.
Democrats hate that because they know that's so good. By the way, I keep saying yesterday, it's been a weird week. Today's Thursday, it was 2 days ago, it's all blurring together. How good is that? That was perfect. This is Ben Domenech. He said, I see your Lenny Skutnik. By the way, Lenny Skutnik, let's talk about Lenny Skutnik for 1 second. Lenny Skutnik has become a term. So there was an airplane crash in the Potomac River in D.C. in 1982. And there was a helicopter that came in to try and rescue people. And there was a woman in the water, freezing cold water, and she tried to grab onto the rope from the helicopter, and she couldn't hold on anymore, so she fell back in the water. Lenny worked for like the Congressional Budget Office or something like that. And he was watching on the shore, and he couldn't take it anymore, and he dove into the icy water, and he swam out, and he pulled this woman to safety, Lenny Skutnik. So he was invited to Reagan's State of the Union speech in 1982. So he was the first guest. There he is, awesome mustache. He was the first guest of a president during the State of the Union. So that's why these props, these guests are called Skutniks. All right? So that's why Ben, he said, I see your Lenny Skutnik, and I raise you a preemie, a little girl who gets to go to school, a soldier turned addict turned success, a kid who wants to go to space, and his 100-year-old Tuskegee warrior hero, the wronged families of sanctuary city policy and endless war, the young leader battling socialism, the parent who got vengeance for their daughter, and the war family tearfully reunited. Most of this is thoroughly Trumpian because it's not about ideology. It's about good television. And that was good television. What's the president going to do next? Haul out Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and shoot him in the head? In the meantime, Trump is riding high, and this leads into the speech today at noon Eastern, which we will be anchoring here on the 1st. In the meantime, Trump's riding high. His party held together through impeachment. His poll numbers are at the highest levels. The economy's booming. His big calls on terrorism, on terrorist killing, haven't drawn us into further war. Things are working for him. His supporters are emboldened. His opposition's divided, frustrated, struggling to even get their votes counted. And you know the president's going to talk about Iowa today, too. He's in the midst of the best week of his presidency. And this is coming after the best week of his presidency, which was during World War III, 30 days ago. It's stunning. And it's happening at exactly the right time to ensure he gets to play this part for 4 more years. But on the Skutniks, his guests, do you see the difference from other State of the Unions? They weren't just people up there. And I use the word prop, I don't mean it to be disparagingly, right? It's one thing, and it's a good thing, actually, to share a story and say, hey, look, here's this guy's story, and here he is. Like, that's a good technique. But Trump didn't just do that. He didn't just point to them and use that as a launching pad to make a bigger point. That's very good rhetoric. But he went beyond that. He engaged them. He brought them into the speech. It's maybe more, he left the speech and went into these moments. He went into the stands almost. Never been done before. And he did it like 6 times. There's nothing like that. There's never been done before, certainly at the State of the Union. And that's why that was so good. That was good television the other day. Now, some say, oh, that again was beneath the dignity of the State of the Union. I'll get over it. State of the Union is so stupid anyway. State of the Union was made for a time when people in D.C. never met. Or they never ever met. And that was State of the Union was for a time when people didn't even know what the president looked like, and didn't pay any mind to what happened in Washington D.C. Didn't even care, right? And that's why the Constitution's like, from time to time, the president should kind of like give an address or something. That's why Thomas Jefferson didn't even give one. He wrote it out, right? The State of the Union is from a different era. We don't need it anymore, right? We're inundated with news nonstop. We don't need the State of the Union. So if we're going to do it, let's have some fun with it. David Graham, he's not a Trump supporter at all. He said it's hard to imagine a successor having either the will or the ability to pull off stunts like this. Trumpism as a political ideology will endure after this president leaves office, but Trumpism as a political style is attainable only by Trump. It's true. But even if you're Trump, I don't know how you top this next time. All that being said, what do the Democrats have to offer? They're freaking out. We'll talk about that next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back. I want to talk about the state of the Democratic Party right now. Here is Democrat strategist James Carville.
This is not going particularly well so far. And why is Tom Perez still the chairman of the Democratic National Committee? I have no idea. This party needs to wake up and make sure that we talk about things that are relevant to people. We need to go back to 2018, where we had good, diverse, strong candidates that had real connections to the community and talked about real things. We don't need to become the British Labour Party. That's a bad thing. It's not going well over there. So Democrats, and now I want to see these candidates, and Mayor Pete's got something going. Hopefully Senator Warren can become that student at the University of Houston, that single mother that knows that plight that people go through. Who knows? Maybe Mayor Mike can come on. But right now, I got to tell you, I'm not very impressed.
I got to say, James, I'm amazed at how often I hear Democrats reminding other Democrats, if you don't win, none of it's worth anything.
Nothing. Without power, there's nothing. There's only one moral imperative in this country right now, and that is to beat Donald Trump. That's the only moral imperative. It's the only thing I want to hear. Until we understand that. We win every argument, Brian. We win an argument on anything. We don't win elections because we talk about stuff that is not relevant. We had a great experience in 2018, and the day after, we started all this goofy stuff.
Whoa. Goofy stuff? What do you mean goofy stuff like taxpayer-funded sex change operations for prisoners? How dare you, Mr. Carville? How dare you? That's the most pressing issue of our time, just as Elizabeth Warren. Well, I mean, not most pressing. Giving puberty blockers to kids, transgender kids. That's That's the most important, obviously. And we all know the Democrats are doing a great job about speaking to the most super relevant issues to the heartland of America, like free healthcare for illegal immigrants. It's that type of stuff that's really going to engage America. By the way, all the Democrats support that. Do you remember that moment in the debate? It was one of the first debates. Who here supports giving free healthcare to illegal immigrants? And every single one of them rose their hands. By the way, I look forward to the day when I am revered and or old enough where when I go on TV, I can just like roll out of bed, throw on an old sweatshirt and a purple ball cap. And like no one cares. Like everyone thinks that's totally fine. Like James Carville, good for him. Let's do a quick little Van Jones analysis. I think we played this yesterday, but it's worthy again.
Warning the Democrats. What he was saying to African Americans can be effective. You may not like it, but he mentioned HBCUs. Our black colleges have been struggling for a long time. A bunch of them have gone under. He threw a lifeline to them in real life, in his budget. He talked about that. He talked about the criminal justice reform. He talked about opportunity zones.
This school choice,
he talked
which
about
is a big
school choice.
issue. Yeah.
Listen, wake up.
He doesn't have to be effective.
Exactly.
He has to be effective to move margins in key states.
And the thing about it is, and I think that we got to wake up, folks. There's a whole bubble thing that goes on. We say, well, he said S-hole nations, therefore all black people are going to hate him forever. That ain't necessarily so. And I think what you're going to see him do is say, you may not like my rhetoric, but look at my results, look at my record to black people. And if he narrowcasts that, it's going to be effective, which means as we move through this primary process, we've got to pay a lot more attention both to what's going on with the Latino vote, are we going to get a benefit in terms of having them respond, and with the black vote, is there going to be a split off, especially for black male voters? We got to be clinical about this stuff. We get so emotional about it. That was a warning to us, a warning shot across the ballot Democrats that he's going after enough black folks to cause us problems. It's not just the white suburban voters. He's going after black voters.
If I thought about it ahead of time, I should have had an old sweatshirt and old baseball cap. I could have changed into it in the meantime there. So again, perhaps the opposite's true. All we've heard for years is that Trump is a white supremacist. There's dog whistles all over the place. Klan members are being emboldened. There's Klan members walking down the street all the time. President's the most racist person in the world. And perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps, as Jesse Kelly and I talked about a week or so ago, Trump's going to walk away with a record of the black vote, 10, 15%, even more maybe. And Van Jones sees that happening. We've talked many times, and I'm going to do it again, but about black voters, but a lot of people, it's more than that. Majorly pro-school choice and pro-life, and the Democrat Party not, obviously. So Trump is going to tactically poach away those voters all day long, at least for the next, how many months? 7 months, 8 months, 10 months. And the media is not, so you see the disarray, right? We have these two top strategists who are freaking out right now. And the media is not helping the Democratic Party because they keep dragging everything into the lowest common denominator of pettiness. Let me give you an example of that. So this is the Rush Limbaugh moment, right, during the State of the Union. It was really nice. Rush has stage 4 lung cancer, which is a very bad diagnosis. Trump gives him the Medal of Freedom, and then they pinned it on him right there, right? It's a very nice moment. Now, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she did not go to the State of the Union, and she was very missed. But that was her protest to not go. So here's her take on that really nice moment. Whether you like Rush or not, here's what she said about it.
Reaction to Rush Limbaugh receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. First of all, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is an extraordinarily sacred award. We're talking about putting someone on the same level as Rosa Parks, for example, in terms of their contributions to American progress. Rush Limbaugh is a virulent racist, but even just on top of that, to do it in the middle of a State of the Union and not even dignify it with its own ceremony as it has, there's all sorts of norms that are being violated, not just for people's humanity, but also it truly just cheapens the value of it. Also, him pretending to be surprised was such a joke. This has been news all day. There have been multiple reports from multiple news outlets saying that Rush Limbaugh was going to receive the Medal of Freedom, and then Trump announced it, and he had to pretend that this was some kind of Oprah moment was so disingenuous.
Yeah, so that's all as petty as Nancy ripping up the speech. Let's run through those 3 points real quick. So let's talk about the sacredness of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I see this all the time, CNN, they're like, oh, this award elevates Rush to the position of Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa. Yeah, and Ellen DeGeneres. Okay, she also got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And Lorne Michaels, the executive producer of Saturday Night Live, and Bruce Springsteen has the president, right? And Robert De Niro. These were all people that Barack Obama gave the presidential meeting to. So let's not pretend that this is the most sacred thing in the world, and it's only given to Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King Jr., and now Rush Limbaugh. No, you know who else Obama gave the Medal of Freedom to? Joe Biden. He gave his own vice president the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He still can't win the Iowa caucus. That's the first thing. Second point was there was no ceremony. Why was there no ceremony? Because Rush might not be alive long enough to put on a proper ceremony. How about that, AOC? But I want to talk about her third point, him acting surprised. So why, she's like, oh, the news broke beforehand and he had to go act surprised. Why did the news break before the show, before the State of the Union, that he was going to get the award? Do you know how the news broke? That afternoon, there was a lunch at the White House with the president. There was an off-the-record lunch with a couple different news anchors. I think there were like 8 news anchors there. Chuck Todd, Martha McCallum, a bunch of others. And Trump mentioned it at that lunch. Now, again, it was off the record, which means if you say something, if the president, whoever says something, off the record, you can't repeat it. It's off the record. Well, one of those people told Caitlin Collins from CNN. And Caitlin Collins wrote this. She said, news, President Trump told network anchors during a private lunch today that he will award Rush Limbaugh with the Medal of Freedom, one day after the prominent political host said he has advanced lung cancer. And then 6 minutes later, she wrote this. She said, the conversation is considered off the record, but CNN was excluded this year and therefore did not agree to the mandate. Other anchors did attend the lunch. And then Washington Post ran the same story, also mentioning that they weren't invited to this lunch. So the reason this news got out is because both CNN and Washington Post spitefully ruined the surprise because they weren't invited. David Marcus said that Washington Post decided to steal the thunder of a man who's battling lung cancer. Why? Was this really important news that America needed right away? Or was it a case of an insulted news outlet trolling the president for having the temerity not to ask them to lunch? It was done out of spite. This is Carol Loening from the Washington Post and CNN. She said, Rush Limbaugh at first seemed to act surprised by the award, which was widely reported hours ago and is the reason he's in the VIP guest box. I think it was Jim Treacher who said, you better watch out. The Washington Post is now going to fact check your emotions. So it's one thing to be a bunch of hacks and fact check, facts, but to be like, I don't know, he doesn't really look surprised. That's not very genuine. Like what? That's your angle here? Did you see Congressman Tim Ryan? He walked out of the speech. He wrote a tweet afterwards. He said, I've had enough. It's like watching professional wrestling. It's all fake. I'm annoyed I think showboating bothers me. Just walk out. Just walk out. You don't have to announce that you, right? I'm walking out, everybody. Just walk out. But Dan Crenshaw responded. He said, what exactly was fake about Gold Star families, lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, and honoring Tuskegee Airmen? And he said, why do good, all-American moments make you so angry? There were a couple of those yesterday. Final point on all this. We'll move on from the State of the Union. So the Democrat House members, they wore white, or the women wore white again. This is their nod to suffragettes, the suffrage movement. Problem here with this, the suffragettes, the right to vote, right? They were pro-life. They were all pro-life. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she called abortion infanticide. She said, when we consider that women are treated as property, it's degrading to women that we should treat our children as property to be disposed of as we see fit. Elizabeth Blackwell, she was the first woman to receive a medical degree in America. She said, the gross perversion and destruction of motherhood by the abortionist filled me with indignation and awakened active antagonism. The pro-life lobbying group in DC right now, it's called the Susan B. Anthony List. So, pretty sure if those suffragettes came back, they'd say, I don't think you guys are really, we're not really on the same team here. We'll wrap up here. This week has been a huge win for the president. Again, we're going to take his speech live at noon Eastern today. I'll be anchoring that. Really excited for that. Huge win for the president. And it's making a difference. It will make a difference in November. This is Frank Luntz. He did a focus group right after the State of the Union. Here's what he said.
Our group actually thought that Donald Trump was not inappropriate. They did not think that he was overly partisan. They thought it was a campaign speech for 2020, which obviously it was. But I'm afraid that the people who report the news are actually missing what the voters themselves are saying. We had 2 undecided voters. They moved towards Trump after the speech was done.
Just wait till Bernie's the nominee. I want to talk about that next. I want to talk about $60 trillion. What does $60 trillion look like? And is it even possible for the government to steal $60 trillion from the rich? We'll break all that down next. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, let's talk a little math. Didn't Andrew Yang, I think one of the debates, he wore a pin that said math. Now, he's not the best at it either. He's the one who wants to give $1,000 a month to everyone. He thinks that pencils out. No one's really interested in math, right? And I get it. We all just want promises that make us feel good. But I want to look at the numbers here and help us visualize it. And I wonder as we do this, like send this segment to a Bernie supporter. You have to have a friend who's a Bernie supporter, right? Send this segment to them. I'm just so curious what they say about it. I don't know what they could say. Well, they wouldn't care. They just dismiss it because they don't care. It feels good. So why are you raining on my parade, guy on the television, telling me this is impossible? So we're going to be very generous. Excuse me. We're going to be very generous in this analysis. So Elizabeth Warren and others are calling for $40 trillion in new spending. Bernie's looking at $60 trillion. That's what he's talking about. But again, we're going to be generous. Let's call it $40 trillion. Even though we know with all government programs, it's about 2.5 times more than what they say it's going to be. So they say 40, it's really going to be over 100 trillion. But again, we're going to be generous. Say $40 trillion. So let's show a couple pictures here. So a little perspective on what cash looks like. I sold my truck the other day for $4,000. I had $4,000 in cash and I brought it to the bank and I felt like the richest man in the world. I had like all this like $100, I was like throwing it in the air or something like a rapper. Here's what money looks like. So this pile of money, these are piles of $100 bills. All right. So this pile of money right here by this guy is actually $1 million. That's $1 million in $100 bills, like stacks of hundreds. That's $1 million. Pretty wild, right? See all those movies where they have like a briefcase full of cash? That's like a lot of money in there. If those are hundreds, that's a lot of money. That's $1 million. Okay, let's do the next one. So this pallet of cash, this pallet right here, that's $100 million. So one pallet of cash, a little over waist high, it's $100 million. So the question is, what's $1 billion? If that's $100 million, what's $1 billion look like? Well, it's 10 of those. That's $1 billion, all right? So you're thinking, okay, well, if that's $1 billion, what's $1 trillion? So if you ask me, because I'm not good at math, I'd say, well, geez, I don't know, like 10 of those? No. More than that. What does $1 trillion look like? Here it is. See the person? That's $1 trillion. By the way, those pallets are stacked too high. That's double stacked pallets right there. It's $1 trillion. A truck, a semi, could fit 10 pallets. Too wide, but it could fit 10 pallets long. So imagine 10 semis, like lined up, 10 of them, stacked full of $100 bills and pallets of $100 bills. And then 10 of those long and 10 of those wide, stacked twice high. That's $1 trillion. We're looking at 40 trillion. Doesn't even make sense, that much money. Doesn't make any sense. Our brains can't compute it. That's why, and we'll play this clip here in a minute, that's why when someone says, hey, Bernie, what's up with $60 trillion? He's like, nah, because you can't wrap your head around that. Okay, so now we can visualize this. Well, you can't even. Like, we just visualized it, but that's only one. Now, like, multiply that by 40? You still can't. Like, our brains can't comprehend that number. So, that being said, the Manhattan Institute, they looked at all the Democrats' proposals, on taxing the rich. How are we going to get $40 trillion? I should note that's over 10 years, $40 trillion. So how is the federal government going to steal $40 trillion from the American people? Oh, we're going to tax the rich. You've heard the quotes all the time. We're not going to touch the middle class. We're only going to tax the rich. Okay? So some of their proposals. I think it was AOC. Her proposal is an income tax of 70% over $10 million in income, right? So if you make over $10 million, you got another 70% to income tax, right? But more than that. So we're going to add that. We're going to talk about a new payroll tax. And some of these are from Warren, some of these are from Sanders, a new capital gains tax, and a state tax proposed, a wealth tax from Elizabeth Warren, a corporate income tax increase, a financial transaction tax, I think that one's from Kamala Harris, a bank tax, a carried interest tax, right? All these tax proposals from AOC, Warren, Bernie, Kamala Harris, just all of them. And you add all of them up. The most optimistic estimate. Now, I should also note that this is using static scoring. So static scoring assumes, let's just take a financial transaction tax. So every time there's a financial transaction tax, every time there's a financial transaction, they're going to tax it, okay? That will affect the number of financial transactions that take place. Right? High taxes result in less of that behavior. Progressives know that, which is why they tax cigarettes and sugary drinks, like Mike Bloomberg, right? They tax those things so that people do it less of them, right? That's why Mike Bloomberg wants to put a tax on sugary soda, because he wants people to drink less sugary soda. Yet, they don't realize, or they do but don't care, they don't want you to realize that when they tax a financial transaction, there will be fewer financial transactions, for example. Right? So this is assuming static behavior. So no one, this is not how it works. But this is, again, assuming the best. Static behavior, and this is using their campaign estimates. If you put all those taxes together, we need 40 trillion. All of those would steal from you 9.3 trillion. Or not even 25% of the way there. That's with all of those taxes. More realistic estimates, trying to take into account how the taxes will affect people's behavior and investments and all that, we're looking around 4 trillion. So we're really only about 10% of the way there. So again, Bernie supporter listening right now, Elizabeth Warren supporter, what do you say to that? Like, truly, I'm not trying to be a jerk. Like, here's, you want 40 trillion in spending. I'm telling you that all of these taxes, I'll round up. I'll give you a best case scenario round up. You're 25% of the way there. You've raised 10. You need to spend 40 trillion. You've raised 10. What are you going to do? What's the rest? What's the plan? Now, remember, the wealthiest 5% of Americans already pay 69% of all federal income taxes, 48% of all federal taxes. So there's not much left, right? And we're not even close to what's necessary. So how can the federal government take $40 trillion from you? How can they do it? There's not enough rich people. There's not. You can think there are. You can think, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but it's something like if you took all of Bill Gates' net worth, all of it, because there's a ton of that wealth envy about Bill Gates, right? And there's some website out there where you take Bill Gates' wealth and you can buy things with it and see how many things you can buy. And like, it's crazy. You can buy the NFL like 100 times, right? All the NFL teams 100 times with Bill Gates' money. And there's crazy facts like that. So Bill Gates has got a lot of money. But if you took all of Bill Gates' money, you can fund the government. Don't quote me on this. You can quote me on everything else I've said so far. But you can fund the government for something like 8 days. It's not even a month. Like a couple days you can fund the government, and then you move on to the next billionaire, and the next billionaire, and the next billionaire, and you make it like to June. And all their money's gone. What do you do now? They go after you. All right, so how do we get to 40 trillion? You would, first, you have to cut defense spending down to European levels, okay, which a lot of people would like, okay, but you got to start with that. Then we need a 90% sales tax. 90% sales tax. So that means we double the price of everything. Are you willing to have the price of everything double? And again, that also assumes no change of behavior, and of course there would be. If the price of everything doubled, people would buy half as much stuff. And this assumes no inflation, right? It's like you're not gonna be paid more to make up the difference. Everything else stays the same. We would have a 90% sales tax. So that TV you bought, it's not $1,000, it's now $2,000, and half of that goes to the government. You okay with that? Is anyone okay with that? Bernie supporter, you okay with that? 90% sales tax? On top of that, everyone's income tax would have to go up 17 percentage points. So the median income tax bracket is 12%. That's the median income tax, that's actually paid, 12%. So that means it would go up to 29%. So your federal income taxes would go from 12% to 29% for everyone, not just the rich, for every single person. And the price of everything doubles. You good with that? Of course not. Who is? But no one ever talks about that. Now, will this analysis change anyone's mind? Nope. I used to get frustrated. I used to be like, how can you not see this? And get really mad at the person. But they don't care. No one cares. Logic, reason, math. Bernie doesn't care. This was Bernie. He was asked about this by Nora O'Donnell the other day.
You are a self-proclaimed socialist.
Democratic, put in there, please.
Thank you. Your agenda has promised free health care for everybody, free college tuition, and to pay off people's college loans. The price tag for that is estimated to be $60 trillion over 10 years, correct?
Well, look, we have political opponents
you don't know,
come up.
You don't know how much your plan costs?
You don't know. Nobody knows. This is impossible.
You're going to propose a plan to the American people and you're not going to tell them how much it costs?
Of course I will. Do you know exactly what health care costs will be, 1 minute, in the next...
Yeah. So you're not going to tell people how much it costs, first of all, and you're certainly not going to tell people where all that money's going to come from. It's going to come from you. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. I want to wrap up. I'm so glad the impeachment's over. We've talked a lot of State of the Union today. I'm very excited for the president to give his speech coming up at noon, which we will be anchoring here on the 1st. Let's change gears just a second. So David McCullough, he's one of our great historians. He said back in the day, things worked out because people behaved in certain ways with integrity and resilience. And they figured out how to work with other people, and they tried to do the right thing. He gave a speech recently. He's got a new book. It's called The Pioneers, the heroic story of the settlers who brought America ideals west. And he was given a talk at the Library of Congress. And he said, 80% of our colleges don't require history courses. He said, that's wrong. He also said 30% of our country is illiterate. I don't know where he got that number, but probably, or at least as we've said before, if you can read and don't, you might as well be illiterate. You're no better off than the person who actually is illiterate. If you can read and don't. He talks about how there was a survey of college students back in 2007. Surely it's worse now, but because back in 2007, that's when I graduated. It was just, like, things were just starting to get woke, right? People were like in the very beginnings of applying today's standards to the past. But things were bad back then. They're much worse now. But they found in this survey that graduating seniors of college at our top universities know less about American history than incoming freshmen. Smithsonian Magazine did a report in 2015. Texas Tech students were not sure who we won our independence from or who won the Civil War. How can this be? Most history teachers and professors today have a stated goal to teach that America is the most racist place in history. We're going to get back to that point. Let me change gears for a second. We'll come back around. Great article I read the other day from the great Dennis Prager. The question is, why are so many young people unhappy? He said, it seems that Americans may have been happier and certainly less lonely during the Great Depression and World War II than even today, even with today's unprecedentedly high levels of health, longevity, education, and prosperity. So there's a lot of things that apply to this, why people are so unhappy. But the big one is loss of values and meaning. Loss of values, lack of meaning, the two greatest sources of unhappiness. So first, community association. So Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote Democracy in America, French guy, he noticed in 1831, he said one of the great unique strengths of America were people's participation in community groups. Social, professional, political, civic, artistic, philanthropic, and of course, religious. But that was back in 1831. The government has slowly crowded these out. And that's why many of them don't exist anymore. Why join a fraternal organization that used to take care of widows when the government will just do it for you? Why take part of a civic group when you can instead just lobby the government to do whatever you want? Why join a church and worship God when you can just worship politics? Remember 2012, the Democrats there at their convention, the slogan of the convention was, government is the only thing that we all belong to. How sad is that? And how true, too. But we've talked a lot recently about how politics has replaced, or politics is our new religion in America. We've taken God out of our lives, out of our culture, and we try to fill the void with something. We all do it individually, right? We all fill that God-shaped hole with pleasures. Sex, money, drugs, alcohol, food, any addictive behavior to try to fill that void. And nationally, we do it with politics as well. And that's gonna leave you pretty empty. And that leads to the lack of meaning. So Viktor Frankl, his great book, Man's Search for Meaning, of course, you gotta read it. Prager noticed out of it that Karl Marx saw man as primarily motivated by economics. Sigmund Freud saw man as primarily motivated and driven by sexual drive. And Charles Darwin and the followers of his, disciples of his, see us as primarily driven by biology, all right? So you got money, sex, biology. Those are the things that drive us. But that doesn't, and the followers of those would say, those are the things that give us meaning. But that doesn't add up. Poor people can have meaning in their life and be happy. And wealthy people can lack meaning and be very unhappy, even with a ton of money. So it can't be about money. What about sex? Well, priests and others have vows of chastity. Widowed people, divorced older people, many people don't have sex and can be happy. And then on the other side, people can be very sexually active who don't have any meaning in their life, and they can be very unhappy. So sex doesn't add up. And then biology, that has no basis whatsoever for this. There's no evolutionary explanation for us to have meaning in our lives, right? No other creatures have meaning, and they survive just fine. Meaning, none of those other variables matter. It's meaning. It's the amount of meaning you have in your life. That's how you find happiness, or a better word for that is contentment. And man has always found meaning in religion. And we can share numbers of how many people are religious in America today, but that doesn't tell the full story, because those are just self-described. Like, people are like, oh yeah, I'm religious, or I'm Christian. But those numbers include a lot of people who say they're Christian who aren't really Christian. They're just culturally Christian. I would have said, before I was baptized 6 years ago, I would have said I was a Christian because I went to church on Christmas and Easter. I was a Creaster, right? And I was a conservative, and you're a conservative, you're supposed to be a Christian. So yeah, I'm a Christian, but I'm not really a Christian. Also, there's a ton of false doctrines out there that can be barely called Christianity. Doctrines, churches that have nothing to do with the Bible. Those aren't gonna help you find meaning. There's a documentary my wife and I, we just finished. It's called American Gospel, Christ Alone. It's pretty good. And it's about the prosperity gospel and false teachers. It's a really great message. But anyway, all that prosperity gospel stuff, that's just about worshiping yourself. It's about worshiping money and yourself, not God. Trying to replace God with things that, again, just like the secular world is telling us, will never bring you true, those things will never bring you true peace. Anyway, here's Prager. He said the bottom line is, the reason why so many young people are depressed, unhappy, and angry is that the left has told them that God and Judeo-Christian religions are nonsense, that their country is largely evil, their past is deplorable, and their future is hopeless. That seems to be the major reason, if not the reason, for so much unhappiness. It's not capitalism, it's not inequality, patriarchy, sexism, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, but rather having no religion, no God, no spouse, no community, no country to believe in, and ultimately no meaning. That explains much of the unprecedented happiness. I love this line. So it's, their country's largely evil today, so the present is full of evil. Their past, our past, America's past is deplorable, and the future is hopeless. So that's been preached for at least a decade now. Here it is in action. Check out this chart right here. Now, it's a confusing chart, but this is from November. This is November's consumer confidence. So here we are way at the end there on the right-hand side. So this is a chart of the gap between consumer confidence of those under the age of 35 and those over the age of 55. So you can see the gap. There's always been a gap. That was since 1980, so 1980 is way on the left. So there's always been a little bit of a gap, but now it's bigger than ever. So you want to know why Bernie is ahead on people under the age of 35? It's because those people are scared. People under 35 are scared. And why wouldn't they be? We're a racist country today. We were founded by horrible racist people in the past, and the world's going to end in 12 years from global warming. So why, if that's true, if you are raised in that culture and you're just seeped in that and you hear that messaging every single day, why would you have any confidence? Why would you have any meaning? And who traffics in that rhetoric? People who want your votes. You wouldn't think that would be the most trustworthy source of information, but people tend to believe them. So what do? The opposite. You do the opposite of what culture's telling you. You go to church. You learn the truth of our glorious past. You get engaged in some local group of good people. And if you do that, it'll restore some hope for you in the present. And I'm confident that you'll find more hope in the future. And if you want some more hope in the future as well, tune in at noon, because the president is going to give a speech that I can't wait to hear, because it's been a pretty awesome week for him. So it's coming up at noon Eastern. I will be anchoring that coverage, so be sure to tune in to the First 4 coverage there. Until then, see you this afternoon, and then we'll see you back again tomorrow. Mike Slater, True Story. Spread the word.